Hey guys, Morgan here. I know it's been a long time since I have done a video for my other channel, The Process 101. Hopefully, in the next couple of, it's taken a while for me and DJ from Amboy Podcast and this third person that we wanted to get involved with this podcast to get dates and times coordinated. So it looks like the 19th of August we'll finally be able to do that, sit down and do a podcast talking about the things that I talk about on the Process 101. So it'll be me, DJ from Amboy Podcast, and this third person that will be unnamed for the time being. Um, we will be talking probably about four subjects. Probably spend I would imagine 15 to 20 minutes on each, and that'll be the first podcast up on the channel. But today I want to talk about two or three things here really quick. One being the election and what's going on with that, and I think there's a lot. This is a very strange election in that there are a lot of strange things going on. Obviously, a lot of stuff going on with Hillary Clinton and all of the scandals and all of the bullshit, um, and the fact that there was such a huge support for Bernie Sanders, and of course he didn't get the Democratic nomination, and you know I've voiced this before. I was a big Bernie. I am a big Bernie Sanders supporter, but I knew that just wasn't going to happen in the end. The powers that be, they didn't want that. Trump. I think what Trump did is gave you what white America wanted. Absolutely, said things that incited controversy because what he knew is if he put Bernie Sanders up against him, he couldn't win. But if he got Hillary Clinton, he could win against Hillary. But only, and I notice this now, his speeches, now he's making very intelligent, well spoken, well thought out interviews as soon as he knew that Hillary was his running mate. Um, and now he will pull in. I think what Trump will do now is pull in those Bernie Sanders supporters because for the by and large, what I've seen on social media is there really are no. I have never seen any. No, I saw one person early on, but they putting their support out for Hillary Clinton, and that girl got shut down real quick. I saw, and she never posted anything political about Hillary Clinton. Everything, by and large, has been very negative. And most of you may know my feeling on the election. It doesn't matter who the president is. That's just a person. They're just a figurehead. It doesn't matter who's in there. The powers that be that control um, the world at large are behind the scenes. They're the companies. They're the rich families. It is people like Google and Exxon and Johnson and you know, Microsoft and the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and the Vatican and the Catholic Church and the royal family, and those are the people that really control the world. If you haven't realized that by now, you need to really wise up to that. The world wants you. The media, the powers that be, they want you to be at each other's throats through this election process. That's what this is for. This is to be pitting you against each other, um, and bringing up subjects that are going to incite violence and political unrest. I mean, this is what it does. It's what's happening with the Black Lives Matter thing. People buy into that. The fact that this is something that's gone on forever. It's just you just haven't seen it. Police have been killing black people and treating them unfairly for years. It's just now it's being filmed. Now you're able to see it, what's going on, and they want you to see this. The struggle, I think, too, with police and the bad people is not a struggle of black against the police. The struggle really here in America and it's the simple fact that most crime is committed to acquire vices. And then murder comes out of these as well. And let me elaborate on that. So, as you all know, we had prohibition in America where they tried to stop alcohol. And there's enough information out there and TV shows and documentaries to understand that prohibition did not work. People will want what they want. And you're seeing that now with marijuana. Oregon being one of 4 states now to legalize marijuana. We are going on, I think, almost a year now. It's been legal here in Oregon. It's going very well, as far as I know. Tax revenue is way up. They've been donating a lot to the school systems. I think in the first year or the first 6 months, I don't know, it was astronomical amounts of tax money. Everyone thought, oh, there'll be all these problems and people will be dying left and right. No, nobody died from it. You can't die from marijuana. You may die from marijuana complications as far as like mixing marijuana with, say, other drugs, prescription drugs, or other like alcohol or something like that, and going into like respiratory depression. But you can't die from marijuana. You could get I guess you could get lung cancer. It's carcinogenic, but I've never heard of anybody getting lung cancer. I'm sure it has happened, but I've never heard of anybody getting lung cancer from smoking marijuana. Tons of cigarettes, and I think that's where I'm going back to is people will always fight to have what they want. I don't care what your vice is, whether it's coffee, cigarettes, alcohol, drugs, sex, whatever your vice is. Everyone has a vice. If you say you don't, you're a fucking liar, because we all have them. In fact, I have a person that I work with I've actually 2 people that I work with that are both Mormon. Funny thing is, neither one drink coffee or tea, because that's a misconception too, is Mormons can have caffeine, they just can't have coffee or tea. Something about tannic acids or something that leather your stomach or some horse shit like that. But what I do watch them do is consume mass amounts of energy drinks and Pepsi. And the other person is not addicted to, has never tried alcohol, never done drugs, cigarettes, or anything like that. But what they are addicted to is sex. So I find that very funny that the people who want to say bad things about drugs and alcohol and all that stuff always forget the fact that everyone has an addiction. Everyone has a vice. And I think the people need to realize that will never stop between the police and the bad guys, because as long as things are illegal, people will always fight for it. This is where you get drug cartels. This is where you get prostitution rings, and this is where you get sex trafficking and pimps, and the black market, and the Mexican. This is the problem we're having, and I think it's so funny. If you've got Netflix, Jim Jeffries is a stand-up comedian. He's Australian. He just came out with a new stand-up comedy, and he's talking about a lot of these things. He said in Australia they legalized prostitution straight across the board, and like he was saying on there, it was safer for the women because they're being tested. It's safer for the men because they know the girls are clean. They can go in and see that they've been tested recently. It's also safer for the girls because if men come in drunk and get all aggro and violent, security kicks them out. They get the tax revenue off on it. And like he said, divorce went down by 8%, and everybody wins. So to understand, and I think this comes back to shows like Sons of Anarchy, The Shield, and Weeds, I think are prime examples showing you that the system, what we're doing, does not work. How we're living, the way America runs itself, the rules that we're enforcing on the general public, they don't work. Drugs, alcohol, sex, coffee, cigarettes, like I said, all those things. It's like if tomorrow the U.S. government says coffee is completely illegal, how far do you think people will go to get coffee? They will still go as far as they would to get alcohol because they're addicted to it. As much as you don't want to, a lot of people don't want to acknowledge that coffee is a drug. It's a drug. Caffeine's a drug. It may not be as harmful as heroin, but it's still a drug, no matter what you want to call it. And I think this is also the second part of what I wanted to go into is um, William Burroughs has a quote, and it's still on my Facebook page, and I think it's been there since the beginning. And the quote says, there is a parasitic being in all of man that is working not at all to his advantage." Now, it took me a while to understand what he meant by that, but what I really come to understand is there is a parasitic being in all of us that is not working to our advantage. That is what we call that self-destructive tendency. Um, I think some people have more of it and some people have a lot less of it, but most people have something in between. Um, I acknowledge mine, I understand it, and once you come to understand it, it's a lot easier to deal with. I think that managing these things are easier because there is. And I think what you need to do is go back and look at the parasite itself. The organism parasite is the hardest organism to kill. And it's the oldest organism, not microscopic, but the one you can physically see is a parasite. Parasites live in your stomach, in your digestive tract. And guaranteed, you have parasites in you. If you've had sushi or dogs, you have parasites. End of story. You have them. Just deal with it. And in fact, a tapeworm, and it's funny because System of a Down talks about this in a song. The tapeworm tells me what to do, and they actually can. They secrete an enzyme inside them, inside of you, that makes you crave the things that they want, like sugars and carbohydrates and alcohol. A lot of people think, oh, I can kill it off with alcohol. No, you can't, because by the time the tapeworm gets it, it's just energy, because you've already processed it through your liver, and it's in, you're intoxicated. So you can't kill it off that way. And I think it's funny that too, that we worm all of our animals, all of our pets, but when was the last time you ever or have ever heard of a human being being wormed? We don't get wormed. We do not get parasitic worming. But your animal gets heartworm medication, tapeworm, all those medicines because they have them in them. But we don't until it becomes a problem. Like some people will get a huge tapeworm and it can kill you, and sometimes have to go into surgery and remove it. So I think that's funny that the powers that be never talk about that. But most of you are carrying around parasites in you. It's very hard to kill a parasite off. It's funny, people used to freak out when my brother's dog would eat cigarettes. Would be like, it's no big deal because the chewing tobacco will kill parasites off in your stomach. There are a few other ways to do it as well. You can starve it out. You can do like a cleanse. And juice like parsley, I believe it is. Parsley will juice inside you, and that will kill it off. And then you can buy like an herbal supplement in these parasitic cleanses that they have like different types of barks and herbs and things that will go in and kill off these parasites. But it's very, very difficult to kill off a parasitic being, and that's why going back to the parasitic, what William Burroughs was saying, there's a parasitic being in all of man that is working not at all to his advantage. And I think that's good to acknowledge that we all have these vices, and it's better to, like, for me, I know I struggle with alcohol, and so I've learned to control it. I don't want to give up alcohol. Clearly, I like alcohol. Clearly, look, but it's better to understand that that's there, because a lot of times they want to force you to go through rehab and become completely sober, and I think that's much harder for people to do. It's much easier to try and control it and understand it and admit it, but also understand that it's not terrible to have. I don't think that that's necessarily a terrible thing to have. It's just like, I'm not going to give up coffee, just like my brother's probably never going to give up cigarettes. Actually, he does the vaping thing now, which I guess is better for him in some respect. But I think too, this parasitic being is also working in a negative way. I think these are these self-destructive tendencies we see in people that have personality disorders, narcissistic, and things like that. And I think it's funny too, because Jim Jeffries talks a lot about that kind of stuff. I think he is talking a lot about what I'm talking about here, and because it kind of refreshed my memory on these are things I wanted to talk about, in the fact that, like I was going back to this Black Lives Matter thing and the cops and all that stuff. And I think that's the huge problem in America is as long as you leave a black market open for all of these things that cause murder, because essentially all drug dealing and prostitution and sex trafficking and all these things, black gangs, Latino gangs, they all traffic an illegal substance, and this is where violence ensues and you get murder out of it. And then, with prostitution being illegal, I think you get more rape out of that. Not to say that there aren't going to still be rapists, but I think, like Jim Jeffries pointed out, that kind of stuff lowers when prostitution and when people can easily access vices. I mean, look at prostitution. And I think, and he points this out also at the end of his thing, is attractiveness. What if you're not attractive and you can't find a woman and you still want to enjoy sex, but you can't? Well, what's the only other way to do that is to pay for it. And there are women that are willing to do that. And whether you morally think it's right or wrong, it's still a need. It's still there. It still will be there. Pornography is like what, like a $3 billion industry a year. I mean, it's ridiculous amounts of money spent on pornography. So there is a need for it. And I mentioned this in another video too about attractiveness, and he really points that out. Of we do label people on a scale of 1 to 10, and I think that's so. We try to deny it, and I've had arguments with people before about this, like, you are this, that, like he said in the video, most people are around a 4, 5, or a 6. That's your average person. There aren't too many 1, 2, or 3s, but there are a lot of 4, 5s, and 6s, and maybe 7s. Like he said, I think he says, I'm a 5, but I'm funny, so it makes me a 6.5 or a 7 or some shit like that. And I thought that was really funny that he points it out, that this is how the world works. We do put numbers on things, and we do. It's just an unspoken thing that we don't talk about. But those sort of people do have it easier in life, and they do understand that they sort of gravitate. You sort. It's. I'm trying to figure out how I want to say this. Attractive people gravitate towards other attractive people. Same. I mean, your numbers. It's sort of sort of like damaged people gravitate towards other damaged people. It's just something that happens organically. I can't explain it. I think it's just there, but that is there, and I just want you to understand that what's going on in the world is meant to go on in the world right now, and understand that you have to start. Everyone thinks, well, I can't do anything about it. Well, you can do something about it, but it has to start at a smaller scale. It's like, yes, we could all simply uprise and overtake the government and overtake this 1% of the country that runs the world's finances, like the Rothschilds and the Vatican, if you wanted to rise up. But the biggest problem with that is it comes with all these other complications, like religion is probably the biggest complication in the world. It complicates everything, every aspect of our lives, every aspect of our laws, and it's just it's something that, and Jim Jeffries, once again, I really watch this stand-up comedy, because not only is it funny, but he's really talking about some very, very serious things. And he's, like he said, he kind of does the analogy of a train, and it's like at the front, running it and pulling it along is the scientists and keeping us running, and the people that are inventing things that are making our lives better. And by and large, those highly educated people are atheists. But then the people that are slowing down the train, that make up the majority of it, are those right-wing, unfortunately right-wing Christians that are slowing us down, who are putting these roadblocks in front of us. And we have to think outside the box. We have to stop thinking that Jesus and God are coming back, and that we have to start thinking past that and thinking there might be something else out there. Not even out there, this might be it. There is another story, and believe me, there is absolutely another story. I've said this before. The history you have been told about America, about the world, is not the truth. None of it. Absolutely nothing you have been told is the truth. And um, I've said this a million times. Jordan Maxwell's famous quote: "Nothing in this world works the way that you think it does," and that is the absolute truth. I don't claim to know everything, and I think that's the hardest part for a lot of people to understand, is the fact that you don't know anything. You barely know that. It's barely scratching the surface. I think, like I said before, the movie The Matrix is a perfect analogy for what is really going on. You can take the blue pill or the red pill, and one will keep you dumbed down, and you can stay that way, and you can stay this mindless drone and consuming and being part of the hive, which is what they want you to do. They want you to just consume and be mindless and be a drone, and just that's why we have parasites. Parasites keep us down. Um, they want you to not think, not look to alternative media, things like the books that like Jordan Maxwell's written, Michael Tsarian's written, David Icke. David Icke's a really big one. But and David Icke, Michael Tsarian, and Jordan Maxwell, and all those guys, they're on YouTube. They have lots. I have said Michael Tsarian has tons and tons of long lectures about the real history of the world. He's very, very smart. He absolutely knows what he's talking about. So does David Icke. In fact, I've stressed this so many times to people lately. There is a documentary on Hulu called 1984: A New World Order. And a lot of you, I hate to say that word, the New World Order, because it just it incites this weird, it's just another religious documentary on the end of the times. It's not. It's actually interviews with all of these people, and it's probably one of the most important documentaries you'll ever watch. And I'm telling you right now, everything in that documentary is the absolute truth. Listen to it in detail, absorb it, because it's very hard to take. And they talk about that. And like I said, it goes back to the Matrix and the fact that you can swallow the bullshit. You really can. You can swallow that bullshit and take the other pill and just go back to your life, where you can take the other one and you can find out the reality. But unfortunately, once you take that pill and you find out the reality, it's very hard to go back. It's very hard to go back. And I think, and I can't remember what character his name was, but he cuts a deal with one of the agents, and he says, "I want to be put back in the Matrix. I don't want to know anything about this. I want to go back to this." He goes, "I know it's not real, but I want to go back to it." And I think that's the understanding, is once I put all the puzzle pieces together, because it took me a long time. If I had had the internet earlier, it would have been much simpler. But once the pieces fall together, it was like this whole veil was lifted, and it was just like, in that moment, I understood everything. And not that I knew everything, but I got what they were trying to say about what was really going on in the world. And I've been trying to reiterate this stuff to you. So when it comes to what's going on in the world with these riots and these mass shootings and the election, believe me, these are absolutely orchestrated. They are meant to do this to you. They are meant to keep you guys from progressing. It's meant to keep you looking in all these other directions, but what's really going on. And unfortunately, social media and the internet and that kind of stuff has negative connotations as well. It keeps you part of that loop, part of the matrix, as so to speak. It keeps you dumbed down, and I think that's a lot. And they keep you dumbed down, obviously, by what they're feeding you, the food they're feeding you, the everything that's going on in society. The fluoride that's in your water is there on purpose. Fluoride builds up a calcium in the pineal gland. It calcifies around the pineal gland. The pineal gland is very, very important. The pineal gland is what gives you that fight or flight. It gives you that sort of, I'm in a bad situation, or it makes you understand that this person can't be trusted, or this is a bad person. It's that thing, that sixth sense almost of you understand. But the problem is they know by calcifying that it makes you unable to understand, and your thinking is slowed, and you can't process as well as you normally would, and you can't pick up on these instincts as well. Unfortunately, it's very hard to get that calcification out of your pineal gland. Um, Funny, there is a couple ways. You can, I think it's cilantro and parsley. If you do a concentrate of that, I believe you can look it up again on the internet, but I believe that's one way. And one of the easiest ways, actually, and I've heard this from people that have done LSD, is and if they've done LSD later on in life, like say in their early 20s or mid 20s, as soon as the LSD starts to take effect, they'll hear like a little pop inside their head, and what that is that's that calcification cracking. Because what happens is when you take LSD, it swells the pineal gland, and so it breaks that calcification shell that's built up around it, and then that breaks up all of that. The same if you've done ayahuasca, which is now called DMT. But if you do, a lot of people do ayahuasca and they come out and they have a very spiritual transformation. I think also, what's the other one? They do it in Young Guns. It's made from a cactus. I'm drawing a blank on the name of it, but there are some basically illegal drugs will decalcify your pineal gland. And I will talk more. I would like to talk more about the pineal gland and its relation to Egypt, and I think I will go more into the pineal gland. I want to do more on that. Like I said, I do have more stuff I'd like to do for this channel, more specific. But today I just want to kind of give you an update on what's going on. This was more of a ramble, but it was more of, I just want people to be aware of what's going on in the world right now and understand why. And like I said, if you haven't seen shows like Sons of Anarchy, The Shield is a very good one. Kurt Sutter nails these. He understands that both sides lose, no matter what. The good guys and the bad guys always lose on both sides. They're always going to lose. The police don't understand this. The bad guys do, because usually the bad guys are 2 or 3 steps ahead of them, because once they acquire enough wealth, they can buy off things and get better equipment and understand how the cops operate, because they have time to do that, whereas the police are just kind of treading water. That's what police don't understand, is the police are just treading water right now, and they don't understand that they can't get their head above water, because the bad guys are always 2 or 3 steps ahead of you. They always will be, and this is something that we haven't figured out. And like I said, what I'm trying to say in this video overall is we must change, we must evolve, we must start thinking critically and looking past all of the bullshit that you're being fed on Facebook and all these other social media and Fox News and C-SPAN, all these channels, everything on television is complete bullshit, and then the fact that religion is complete bullshit, and you have to work past that and understand that if this society is going to survive, we have to evolve and we have to change, and that's what I've been trying to get through to everybody. And like I said, hopefully I will have more of this. It just takes me longer to do this stuff, and with my job, it just is so difficult. So that's it for now, guys. So take it easy, and the truth is out there.